On a quiet suburban street lined with trimmed hedges and spotless driveways, a storm was brewing, not of weather, but of prejudice. A man, newly moved into his dream home, found himself under scrutiny before he could even unpack. The reason? The color of his skin. The Homeowners Association, led by one woman determined to protect the neighborhood, had marked him as an intruder. But what she didn't know was that the man she labeled a threat had spent his life protecting people like her. Because this trespasser wasn't just any man. He was the FBI. The neighborhood had all the trademarks of wealth and order. Rows of luxury cars sparkled in driveways. Kids rode expensive bikes without a worry. And behind it all, the HOA ensured everything looked perfect. On paper, it was the picture of harmony. But for Michael, a black man in his late 30s, it would soon become a battlefield. Michael had worked tirelessly for years, balancing undercover assignments, late-night investigations, and life on the road. For once, he wanted peace. He had finally bought his own place. A large brick front home with a lawn he dreamed of mowing on weekends. But as he stood on his driveway that first morning, sipping coffee and soaking in the silence, eyes were already watching him. From behind half-closed blinds, whispers started. A black man unloading boxes into a home that had always belonged to an older white couple? Some neighbors assumed he was hired help. Others muttered that he was snooping. And then there was Karen, the HOA president. Known for her iron grip on the community, she saw herself as the neighborhood's guardian. For her, Michael's very presence didn't fit the picture of what she believed belonged. So she made a choice, a dangerous one. Karen began taking notes. The time Michael arrived, the car he drove, and who visited. Soon, she had convinced herself this man wasn't a neighbor, but a trespasser. She even gathered a few like-minded residents, fueling their fears with her certainty. To them, Michael wasn't a homeowner. He was an outsider. And in her world, outsiders weren't welcome. It started subtly at first. A lingering car was parked at the end of the street whenever Michael was outside. Flyers slipped into mailboxes about community safety. Cold stares followed him as he walked his dog. He had faced much worse in his FBI career, but this was different. This was supposed to be his sanctuary. One Saturday morning, he returned from the grocery store to find a bright orange notice taped to his front door. Trespassing is prohibited. Non-residents will be prosecuted. His heart sank, not from fear, but from the realization of what was unfolding. Someone, maybe several people, truly believed he didn't belong in his own home. Still, Michael tried to ignore it. He poured his energy into unpacking, into making the house his own. But every move he made was shadowed. Karen escalated her campaign. She reported him to the HOA for unauthorized vehicles when his friend came to visit. She called animal control, claiming his dog was dangerous. She even approached his driveway, snapping pictures as if gathering evidence. The pressure grew. Strangers muttered when he passed. Parents pulled their kids closer. And then one evening, as he was trimming his hedges, the confrontation finally erupted. Karen marched up, clipboard in hand, demanding to know what business he had on the property. Michael could feel years of training holding him back from exploding. He calmly stated that it was his home, his property, his right. But Karen sneered, insisting she knew who lived here, and threatened to call the police if he didn't leave. For the first time in his career, Michael felt the sting of being treated as a criminal not because of his actions, but because of his skin. And though he had been trained to stay undercover, to remain invisible, something in him refused to be erased in his own home. Word spread fast. The next day, patrol cars rolled slowly by. Neighbors gathered in hushed clusters, watching. Karen had indeed reported him, and Michael knew. This wasn't just about property lines anymore. This was about his dignity, his identity, and the quiet war between perception and truth. The morning sun rose on what would become the breaking point. Michael stepped outside in a crisp suit, his FBI badge clipped discreetly to his belt. He had no intention of flaunting his position, but the relentless harassment had left him with no choice. Karen was waiting, flanked by 2 HOA members, ready to escort him off the premises. She held her phone tightly, prepared to dial 911 at the first sign of resistance. The group moved closer, accusing him of breaking into the house, of endangering the community. But this time, Michael didn't back down. With steady hands, he pulled out a folder, official documents proving ownership. He laid them on the hood of his car. Then, in one fluid motion, he revealed his FBI credentials. The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's smirk faltered, her clipboard trembling in her grip. The neighbors, who had gathered once again to watch, shifted uncomfortably as the truth sank in. The man they had labeled an outsider, a criminal, a trespasser, was not only the rightful owner of the home, but a federal agent who had spent his life serving the very country they claimed to protect. Michael didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He simply stood there, letting the weight of the moment settle. The very people who had reduced him to his skin color were now forced to confront the truth of their prejudice. And for Karen, humiliation burned deeper than any words he could have spoken. In the days that followed, the neighborhood's atmosphere shifted. Some residents avoided eye contact, ashamed of their silence. Others tried awkward apologies. But Michael knew the scars ran deeper than any apology could fix. Racism didn't vanish overnight because a badge was revealed. Karen, however, wasn't let off so easily. Her behavior had crossed legal lines. Michael filed a formal complaint, detailing her harassment and false reports. The HOA board, under pressure, voted her out of her position. For once, accountability caught up to the self-appointed gatekeeper. Michael stayed. He refused to be driven out of the home he had worked so hard for. Each morning, as he watered his lawn or waved at children riding bikes, he stood as a quiet reminder that prejudice could not dictate where he belonged. But beyond the cul-de-sac, his story carried weight. Friends, colleagues, even strangers who heard about it were forced to reflect. How many others face the same judgment every day? Without a badge, without proof, without power to silence their accusers. This wasn't just a story about one man and one neighborhood. It was a mirror held up to society, a reminder that bias doesn't always wear a hood or shout slurs. Sometimes it hides behind clipboards and HOA bylaws, dressed up as concern for safety. Michael never wanted to be the center of attention. He only wanted peace, but in standing firm, he exposed a truth many prefer to ignore. And perhaps that's the question we should all sit with. If a man has to flash an FBI badge just to be believed in his own home, what does that say about the rest of us?